Welcome to the Global War Watch Network. You've likely heard the headlines, maybe seen some dramatic images. The media reporting on this high-stakes summit in Alaska between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, fighter jets roaring overhead.
Yeah, and our sources absolutely confirmed there was indeed a significant flyover. Screaming jets marking the very beginning of this summit. It happened at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, Anchorage, Alaska, August 16, 2025. But today, our mission is really to cut through that noise. We're going to unpack the reality of the meeting, look at what was, well, truly said and agreed upon, or maybe not agreed upon, and think about how a lack of transparency plus some specific statements can really shape how we all perceive these critical global events.
Right. Our goal for you today is a precise, thorough analysis of this encounter everyone was watching. We'll be sifting through the reports, trying to understand the actual outcomes, the subtle cues, and, the broader implications for the Russia-Ukraine war, for global dynamics generally. So get ready for a clear, concise understanding, hopefully without feeling totally overwhelmed by all the information flying around. Okay, let's start by painting a picture. The setting itself. Sources describe the atmosphere right from the get-go. This wasn't like just a standard meeting. It was framed as something big, almost a spectacle, designed to send a message. Trump and Putin arrive at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, and from the moment Putin steps off the plane, sources say a really warm welcome.
It's fascinating, the choreography involved here. I mean, picture this. A red carpet rolled out just for Putin. That's usually for, full state visits, right? Then he gets into Trump's own presidential limo. From the tarmac straight to the venue. And our sources highlight that flyover, those screaming jets starting things off. It set a very dramatic, almost cinematic tone. This wasn't just about getting from A to B. It felt like a very carefully managed display.
And that friendly tone was pushed right away. Putin thanks Trump for hosting. Then he starts praising the historical U.S.-Russia relationship, even mentioning the Soviet Union, joint missions in World War II. He talked about shared values, too, which our sources note is kind of a standard talking point for Russian officials.
Yeah, especially when trying to sort of woo Trump and his team.
Right. And Putin specifically praised Trump for that friendly tone, and importantly, for understanding that Russia has its own national interests. He even threw out the idea that the next meeting could be in Moscow.
And this brings us to a really crucial point, analytically speaking. How much of the perceived success of this summit, at least from Moscow's perspective, was purely about the optics? Putin showing up on U.S. soil first time in 10 years. Moscow celebrated that. They saw it as a clear sign that Russia wasn't a global pariah anymore. You have to remember the context. Russia was largely shunned by the West after invading Ukraine in early 2022. So this meeting just happening was a huge symbolic win for them, regardless of outcomes.
And the official Russian reaction really drove that home. Their foreign ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, she was apparently delighted, said she expected the Western press would be on the verge of losing their minds, seeing that red carpet in the U.S., especially after 3 years talking about Russia's isolation. It felt almost like a deliberate poke, didn't it?
Absolutely. It was a clear signal that the visual, the message sent by the imagery, was paramount for them.
Seeing that red carpet, the limo, it's like diplomatic theater.
Exactly. All the trappings of a state visit, but without, the actual commitments that usually come with one. It definitely signaled a shift, or at least a perceived shift, in Russia's diplomatic standing, a re-entry into that top-level engagement.
Okay, so we've seen the spectacle of the arrival, but what did it actually achieve? Let's peel back those layers now and look at the diplomatic reality, what was agreed on, or wasn't, particularly about the war. And here our sources are really clear. Despite all that friendly chat and the grand optics, the summit basically ended with a thud. Both leaders had to admit they failed to reach any agreements on how to end the Russia-Ukraine war.
And that thud, it wasn't just about failing to agree. It kind of subtly broadcast that for Russia, maybe the appearance of engagement was more important than actual progress. It helps normalize their position on the world stage without giving anything up. That highlights a real asymmetry in their goals, which tells you a lot about Putin's longer game. Remember, Trump went in hoping for something concrete, right? A ceasefire, maybe, or at least a Russian commitment to negotiate.
Yeah, and he had to admit it publicly, saying, we haven't quite got there, and stressing, there's no deal until there's a deal. That sounds like unmet expectations, pretty clearly. And even though both men called the talks productive, you heard phrases like extremely productive or very productive, there was this striking lack of any announcement of solid achievements or concrete results, just nothing tangible.
If you connect that to the bigger picture, yeah, the diplomatic progress was minimal. Despite the warm, fuzzy atmosphere, it really highlighted that disconnect. You can have a cordial personal relationship between leaders, but that doesn't automatically translate into breakthroughs on tough international issues. Even the Joint News Conference was telling, less than 15 minutes long, offered, as you said, no concrete results and really little departure from their previous statements on the war. That brevity, plus the lack of substance, just underscores how little progress was actually made. Trump himself admitted there were substantial gaps they just couldn't bridge.
So what does this mean for public understanding, for you trying to make sense of it all? Our sources point to a significant lack of transparency around what was actually discussed. For example, that joint news conference. It ended with the leaders taking no questions from reporters. Zero.
And Trump's departure from that presser was really notable. He abruptly cut short his plans to take questions. That was widely read as a clear sign of his disappointment. Neither leader gave specifics about the discussions, just those vague claims of productivity. And this kind of information vacuum, it's not just an accident, it can be a deliberate strategy.
It sure feels like it sometimes. And it's worth pointing out, Trump didn't publicly address the killing of Ukrainian civilians in Moscow's attacks. Then later, talking to Sean Hannity on Fox News, a platform where Trump often speaks directly to his base again, no details about the Putin talks. So when clear facts are missing, that vacuum gets filled, right? Often by carefully crafted narratives, maybe even unverified claims, makes it incredibly hard for the public to tell real progress from just, well, political theater.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how narratives around these huge events get shaped when information is controlled like that, or when claims that aren't backed up get amplified. Take Putin's comment about the 2020 U.S. election. He noted Trump often said the Ukraine war wouldn't have happened if he'd won in 2020. And Putin, standing there on U.S. soil, just says, I think that would have been the case.
Wow. That's quite a statement from Putin, especially given the context. And our sources say there's no independent verification for that claim at all. So how does a comment like that, totally unsubstantiated, actually work to shape the narrative, especially about the war's origins?
Well, it's a classic move, isn't it? Using that high-profile moment to inject something unverified right into the public conversation. Like the source says, no independent verification or indication that Moscow would have acted differently if Trump had won instead of Biden. Zero. But because head of state said it, in that setting, it gains this weight, a perceived legitimacy. And that can absolutely influence how people see the war, where it came from, how it's going. It really forces us, as information consumers, to be critical, to constantly ask, where's the proof? Who benefits from this claim?
Okay, let's shift to the real-world impact then. What does this inconclusive summit mean on the ground in Ukraine and beyond? What's the takeaway for the conflict moving forward? I mean, the most direct implication seems pretty stark. The conflict is just likely to continue without an immediate diplomatic breakthrough, no quick end in sight.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, sources strongly suggest that time appears to be on Putin's side. This kind of long stalemate, it actually plays into Russia's strategy. For Moscow, this is partly a war of attrition, not just militarily, but against Western unity and resolve. They might be betting on fatigue setting in, on democratic political cycles. So while diplomatic progress is just creeping along, Russian forces, with their larger numbers, can keep slowly grinding down defenses in eastern Ukraine. We're talking about a conflict that's already 3.5 years old at this point.
And it seems Putin got quite a bit out of the optics alone, separate from the battlefield. He got that pleasant reception in the U.S., walked away without giving up anything significant on the war. That's not just PR, right? It could actually embolden Russia. It shows they can engage with the U.S. at the highest level, get that legitimacy boost, without making real peace commitments.
Definitely sends a message. To allies, to adversaries. Trump called this a feel-out meeting, remember? Said he only gave it a 25% chance of failure. But the outcome means that any future path to ending the conflict diplomatically, it's still completely undefined, highly uncertain. Trump had even floated this idea of a follow-up, right? A three-way meeting with Zelensky in Alaska if things went well. But sources say no such progress was announced. It's just unclear what comes next.
So despite the handshakes and the friendly talk, the deep issues are still there, maybe even more entrenched. And it's probably worth noting who was actually in the room for these talks. For the U.S., you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's also the National Security Advisor, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He's known for tricky negotiations.
Right. And on the Russian side, there are veteran Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and National Security Advisor Yuri Ushakov. So the top people were there.
Yet the gap remained.
And Putin's own words kind of underlined the challenge. He said Moscow and Washington should turn the page. But also noted relations had sunk to the lowest point since the Cold War. Even with a friendly tone, that statement highlights this huge chasm between the surface interaction and the deep geopolitical reality. Leaves us with a very uncertain outlook for actually resolving this conflict meaningfully.
So let's wrap up what we learned today. A really high-profile summit, lots of drama, warm welcome for Putin. But ultimately, it failed to deliver any concrete diplomatic progress on the Russia-Ukraine war. The controlled information, the unverified claims we talked about, they really show how narratives get shaped around these things. And for now, it seems the strategic advantage might still be with Russia, the path to peace. Still very unclear. For you, trying to navigate this, maybe the key takeaway is just how different the surface appearance of these meetings can be from the actual substance or lack thereof.
Yeah, and that raises a really important question for you to think about. When leaders meet like this and the results are thin, how do you tell the difference between genuine progress and just carefully managed perceptions? And what's our responsibility as people trying to stay informed to spot those nuances, those unverified claims in the stories we're told? It's definitely a challenge we all face in today's information environment.
Well said. Thank you for spending your time with us today and for participating in trying to understand these really critical global events. If you found this discussion insightful, please do like, share, and subscribe to Global War Watch Network. We really value your thoughts, so please share them in the comment section below. And join us on social media too. All the links for that are provided in the description. Thanks again for listening.